Since Iran,
multiple U.S. officials
downed aircrew.
Iran
passed through the Strait of Hormuz.
Right now, there is one small strip of the ocean that is quite literally deciding how much your groceries are going to cost for probably the next year. And the crazy part is that most people are not paying attention. Now, I think I can speak to this intelligently and from a personal perspective because my family farms. And so I am directly seeing the cost of fertilizer and oil prices going up and how that affects what we decide to produce, when, and how. And along with that, I work in the world of fertilizer. So I'm actually selling farmers equipment and material that helps them grow food via fertilizer. And so that industry in and of itself, I'm actually seeing a major hit due to this whole Iranian war issue. Now, combine that with the fact that I do have a bachelor's of science in soil science, so I can actually intelligently speak to the fact that I know why fertilizer is important. And even if we do try to cut corners as producers or farmers, there are going to be negative effects on our yields, on the quality of the food we grow. And in some cases, farmers are just choosing to fallow fields. And we'll talk about that here in a little bit and what that means. But all in all, it means a major decrease in potential food supply and a massive increase in the cost of that food. It's Easter. And so I did just have a family supper. And one of my relatives is dating someone from Iran. She actually left Iran with her child to escape the Ayatollah. And she interestingly gave me a lot of insight into the Strait of Hermuz and just kind of the socioeconomic state of that area. Now, the Strait of Hormuz, when it comes to oil, we already know is a major route for oil to move through. It's something ridiculous, like 20% of all the world's fuel goes through that strait. And this has made barrels of oil go up to $100 per barrel, which is enormous. Now, the portion of food production that this obviously disrupts is the ability to move tractors. It actually impedes fertilizer making as well, because there's a lot of oil that goes into the making of conventional fertilizers. It affects greenhouses' abilities to function, and then it also affects transport of obviously the fertilizers, the grains, etc., and so forth. Now, that's not to mention how it affects the transportation of the finished good from the farmer or from the factory to the grocery store where you then eat it. Within a single month, all the data points to it increasing food prices 2.4% in 30-ish days. Now, I don't know about your household and how much money you are spending on groceries currently, but for my household, and there's a lot of us here, we're much smaller than your average size family by a lot. It's somewhere around $700-ish a month. So what that means is that my groceries cost now $20 more than they did last month. If this was to continue to increase and compound, that number is just going to get worse. But say it did just stay at 2.4%, which a little bit of a spoiler alert here, probably not going to happen. It's probably going to go up. What they're predicting, unfortunately, is that within the year of 2026, that the cost of groceries is supposed to jump anywhere from 15 to 20%. Yes. Yes, I know. That is insane to me. You wouldn't think groceries could get much more, but they apparently they can. They can, to the tune of 15 to 20%. Now, 3 crops you can grow, whether you're an expert gardener or an absolute beginner, that are highly dependable, meaning that they are very likely to sprout, they're very likely to grow, and they actually require little to absolute zero fertilizer input, can include things like beans. My preferred favorite is the bush beans, not the pole beans, but you can go with either or. Potatoes are a no-brainer, and then squash. And by squash, I mean pumpkins, but preferably things like spaghetti squash, butternuts, acorns, that sort of thing. Now, what I will say is I have lots of videos on how to grow potatoes successfully and well. And I will also tell you that anyone I've ever taught to grow potatoes grows them very, very successfully. So I'm not trying to brag or toot my own horn, but I have grown potatoes that are over a pound a piece. And I've had videos and photos sent by the Geek Crew to me showing these ginormous potatoes that they have also grown using the same method that I use. So check out this video right here if you want to learn more on how to actually successfully grow potatoes. It is not the way that everyone else is doing it. It is completely different, most of which is above ground for the most part, which shockingly enough does make a big difference. So just check that out. So that's oil. But what about fertilizer? Well, it turns out fertilizer is even worse. 30% of the world's fertilizer comes out of that strait. And more specifically, unfortunately, the world's supply of urea, for lack of a better term, comes from that region. 65 to 70% of all urea made on planet Earth for fertilizer comes out of that region. That number I did not know was a thing. That number is huge. If you do not know what urea is, it is what we like to call 46-0-0. 46% nitrogen, 0% potassium, and 0% phosphorus. Switch those around, NPK. That, if you did not know, urea is the bread and the butter to growing any crop in the world. There are areas of the world that are more depleted than others. So for example, if you're farming in the US and you're specifically trying to grow corn, which corn is the foundation of America, well, the world for the most part, you need sometimes 200, 300 pounds of nitrogen per acre. And this is massive. When I started in agriculture, when I started learning about soil science 15, 20 years ago, it was only like big numbers was like 125, 150. Like those were unheard of numbers of nitrogen. But we've depleted our soil so much. We've made plants that require so much through breeding and hybrids that this number has doubled, tripled in some cases, depending on where you are. Where I am in Canada, 80 pounds per acre was pretty normal. 100 was considered high. Now I'm having phone calls with farmers where I have to figure out what their fertilizer rate is that they want to put down and the speed that they want to go to make sure that their equipment can put down that product, for example. And they're calling me saying they want 125, 150. That is crazy. I don't even want to know what numbers we're going to be pulling out of our butts come 15, 20 years from now. But a lot of that is nitrogen. The numbers that they're communicating to me are nitrogen numbers. Now, I don't work in the world of urea. I work in a different fertilizer industry, but that urea is fundamental. It is a liquid form of fertilizer, and it can also be a granular form of fertilizer, slow release and just regular. And the fact that over half of it comes out of that area is really scary to me. So my family farms, like I had mentioned, and obviously they do use fertilizer now. We specifically use liquid fertilizer on our farm. And the price of fertilizer, specifically nitrogen, has gone up between 30 to 40%. Now you're probably thinking, whatever, that's not that bad. But when we're talking fields upon fields of fertilizer, we're talking tens of thousands of dollars. A single field of canola, just for the seed, costs around $80,000. Yeah, it costs a farmer around $80,000 to get just the seed. That does not include the fertilizer. Now you combine the fertilizer going up that much, and I can almost guarantee you that my family in particular will not be taking any of that crop to an elevator to be turned into money unless they're going to have a return on investment. So it will just sit in bins at farms until the price goes up, till the demand increases. So what will happen is we're going to hand over the cash for this massive increase in price for fertilizer, 20, 30, 40%. We're going to harvest said fields, put them in a bin on our farm. We will wait until people begin to get hungry. We will wait until companies begin to beg for the product. We will wait until people start saying, we're going to pay you X amount to give us your product. And we do the math and we say, okay, now we're going to make a profit on said product. So it's time to bring that to market. The exception, if there's a cash flow issue, which does happen on farms sometimes, you have a couple options here. Option number one is that you sell the product to either break even or at a loss to be able to pay for your bills that are coming up because you don't want to go into arrears. That's option number one. Now, not a lot of people are in that position, but some are, and so that will help stabilize the price slightly. The other side of that, though, is that if you don't have the cash flow, then you probably just aren't going to plant. So what you're going to do is you're going to summer follow your field. You're going to give your field a small break. What this means is you're not going to plant anything, or if you do plant anything, it's probably going to be a legume that fixes nitrogen from the atmosphere. And then you're just going to green manure that, meaning you're going to just chop it down and leave it. You're not going to do anything with that field. So rather than that field producing food to probably feed a small town, that field now is not going to produce anything. And that in and of itself is going to drive up food prices because now the supply is less, regardless of what the demand is. Now, where this is very conveniently placed is that the fertilizer and the oil issue are coming at a time where literally both of them are needed to get crops into the ground. And so when it comes to timing, I don't think we could have planned the Iran war even slightly more conveniently, to say the least. So the timing of it is way less than ideal. And it makes this exasperated in the sense that the fertilizer products haven't actually arrived at the elevators in some cases, or the agri centers in some cases, but they haven't arrived at the farms. So because of that, there's either not going to, it's going to increase the demand, or the supply is going to decrease, causing a change. Now, the crazy part about this is the actual timing of the entire situation. We have a world that needs oil and needs fertilizer within the next 2 to 3 months. Actually, 1 to 2 months is closer to that. And it's not there. So the demand is there, but the supply is not. And so that will drive up the costs. And the highest bidder is the one that's going to get those products. And then that highest bidder is also probably the most likely to have the better cash flow, and therefore is the more likely candidate to sit on that product until it is of enough money or value to the human race that they can make a profit on it. Combine this with the fact that the last food crisis was actually in 2022. And this was caused due to an economic slowdown due to the pandemic that then in turn reduced the supply, which in turn caused the demand supply scenario wasn't equaling each other, which drove up costs. There was also a lot of drought. There was a lot of issues in 2022. And so we're actually not even really off that food price explosion of 2022 before, and we haven't even really come down from that before we're about to hit another. So it's really like, I have personally never really seen so many years back to back of problems, whether it's fertilizer, oil prices, droughts, seed costs, like insect damage, disease damage, that sort of thing. So it's like we didn't even really come down from 2022 before we're about to hit the ride that is 2026. So here's the thing. If you are a person that is not wanting to be a sacrifice of the Iranian war, then I highly encourage you to start a garden. You want to grow calorie-dense, easy foods. I named 3 of them, but there's many other ones out there. And if you want to actually learn how to grow in a nonsense, no bullshit method using science and just getting the job done rather than all the hoity-toity, then I actually really heavily encourage you to hit that subscribe button, because that is exactly what I do here on this channel. And if you've been watching this video up until this point, I'm just going to go out on a limb and say you like me just a little bit. With that being said, Nate, you are welcome. I finally made the video that we were texting about. I hope it was up to your standards. He is the Canadian prepper. If you guys do not know who that is, my friend Nate, my dear, dear friend Nate, is the one that told me to make this video. So I am not normally a politician of any sort. Any hoosers, that's what Google says to watch because they're watching you. And that is the least recent video I have done. I will talk to you guys next time. Bye.